started. My name is Kellen. I am president of the sorority, and today we are going to talk about life skills after graduation. So, can everyone see my screen?
There it is.
Great. Wonderful. Okay. So there are just, I don't know where everyone is in terms of their life right now and sort of where you are as far as life skills after graduation. But I'm kind of going to go through this assuming that you're all about to graduate or you've just graduated. And some of this stuff might be obvious to some of you and some of it might not. So I think that really what I want to do is just encourage, sort of a healthy conversation. And if anyone has anything to add or if they want to, jump in, please feel free to do so. So with that said, I'm going to go through kind of these 5 areas: work, money, home and health, well-being, I guess 4 areas. And the fact that all of this is really interconnected. So the first area that we're going to talk about is work. So here are some work tips for that first job. Getting that first job is really exciting. You get in there, you're ready to take on the world, you're ready to sort of make your mark and just kind of do everything and be that awesome, scientist or engineer that you've been training to be. And I would say that for a lot of people, maybe not all of you, but a lot of you, you get there and it's kind of like, dun-dun, like maybe not that exciting. You kind of realize that, there's a reason they call it work. It's what you do day in and day out. And sometimes you will have those exciting breakthroughs, but more often than not, it's a grind every single day. So, while you're sitting there sort of in that grind, there are some things that you maybe want to take into account your first year. I think that probably the biggest thing is to make connections and not burn bridges. When you have that first job, it's really easy to sort of kind of get caught up in the fun of sort of doing everything new. And, you can kind of, you're sort of getting used to work environment and what it means to work with other people and how to manage not only different personalities, but different genders and ages. And that can create conflict. And so the thing that you want to always keep in the back of your mind is, friendly conflict. Don't burn bridges, because you never know when that person that you think is just the worst employee ever who doesn't do anything, it's going to be the person that maybe, gives you the recommendation for that job with that person that, they know from college. So you want to always keep your options open. The other thing is, even though in your first job, more likely than not, a lot of your first tasks are going to be pretty mundane, treat it as a learning opportunity, because that's what it is. Even, the smallest of things like clicking a button may seem like, it's not really that hard and why am I doing this? But, there are reasons why things are the way they are. And, I will tell you, like, I did power management when I first got out of college, and I accidentally started a generator at a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant because I wasn't listening. I didn't listen to my boss, who was like, you absolutely have to, be very conscious of this. and, you know, could have potentially ruined an entire batch of pharmaceuticals. And that's the kind of, you know, it was a learning moment for me. And it taught me really to just, you know, double, triple, quadruple check what I'm doing before I do it. But also that even the smallest thing can have a big impact, you know, like starting a generator. The other thing that you want to do is always be proactive. Always, you know, always look for answers. Always seek out support. Always prepare yourself for a task. You know, there's nothing, now being in a management position, there's nothing more frustrating than having someone sit there and expect things to come to them. It's always the employees who seek things out and are proactive that are the most pleasant to work with. Also, you know, even though you're young, you're hungry, you're ready to take on the world, you know, you may be the most amazing thing to happen to your industry, but, you know, until you have at least a couple years under your belt, you're really not in a position to make ultimatums. And that kind of goes along with burning bridges. You know, generally speaking, a first job's not the time to do this. There are obviously exceptions to that. You know, if you've been in grad school for the last 6 years and you're coming out, you know, well-published PhD, then, I mean, perhaps you could make some ultimatums. But, you know, aside from that, you know, generally be humble about what you don't know and confident enough to ask for help, and, you know, don't sort of, you know, always stick your heels in. The other thing that I think is really important that people sort of forget to do is when you get into your first job, you know, sometimes you might be lucky enough to find yourself in a routine. You know, you're going to the gym every day, you have your friends, you know, you go hang out in the summer at the beach or whatever, and you sort of get comfortable in this routine and you sort of, you know, don't really always think about the future. I think it's always good for people, at least every couple months, to periodically check in with yourself. You know, take a look at your resume. Think about what you're doing. Think about if you're happy doing it. Think about if you're going to be happy doing it for the next 20 years. And just kind of, you know, look around and dream a little. The other thing I wanted to talk about is authentic networking. I think a lot of people talk a lot about networking and how to network and this, that, and the other thing. And I've always kind of found it an odd thing to do. And I think there are some antiquated ways to handle it. But luckily with a lot of, you know, with LinkedIn and a lot of our, you know, new networking tools, it's easier to do it in a more authentic way. I think if I had to give one piece of advice to anyone, it would be that, you know, when you're in college, you know, connect with your professors. In that first internship, link into your colleagues that are there. You know, if you have a mentor at your co-op or your internship, link into them, because it's much easier to do it when you're there in the moment than it is, you know, 10 years from now, when maybe you've decided that that professor who, you know, taught you, I don't know, control systems is a leader in the industry and could help you 10 years down the road, introduce you to some people that you need to work with. It's much easier to use an existing connection than it is to try to revive one that's older. The other thing that I would always say is that, you know, people always sort of focus on, you know, networking with people that are at the top, right? The CEO, like people will always talk about, you know, your 5-second, you know, speech that you would give if you were in an elevator with the CEO. Like what's your, what would be your 5-second marketing spiel or whatever. But the reality is that, you know, people like a CEO or, you know, people in those very high positions are not always the ones making a lot of the decisions. And, you know, their time is very precious. And, you know, usually the better people to try to network with in order to sort of move forward or kind of get input on your career are those who are your peers or even just 1 or 2 rungs higher. because they're oftentimes the decision makers. Or, when it comes to your peers, they're the ones that sort of, they may have a pulse on the company and what's happening in other areas. And they may be in a better position to introduce you to their boss who's looking for someone. Other things that are good to do is, I don't know if you're familiar with LinkedIn's ability to follow companies or industry leaders, but if you're trying to break into a new industry, for example, a great way to do that is to start following a company or a leader on LinkedIn and, like their content and sort of start to get a feel for the company or the industry. It will help you, not only gauge whether or not it's something you actually want to do, but it's also, a good way to sort of, when recruiters see that you're doing this, they recognize the interest in a good way. So before I go on to the next section, are there any questions, or does anyone want to discuss any of this? Anyone? No? Okay. The next thing that I would talk about is money. And this is sort of, when you're graduating college, everyone really talks about it. And there's a reason, because it's very important. Right now, if you're in college, if you're out of college, and you are not budgeting, saving for retirement, or generating a set of financial goals, you need to be doing that. Here are some apps that I found that are great for budgeting. The one that I have at the bottom here is Excel. I will say personally, for me, I use an Excel spreadsheet that I created 20 years ago, and I've used it ever since. It just works for me. And that's really what you need to do. No one app is going to work for everyone. You really have to just look at them all and sort of see what works for you. The basics of a budget really are cash inflow in and then cash flow out. So your salary, your reoccurring income is everything that comes in, and then everything that goes out are sort of, your recurring expenses like housing, food, entertainment, and bills. So investing in retirement. If any of you have started a job, most HR professionals will tell you right away that you should always take advantage of an employer-offered 401k program. It may seem ridiculous to do that in your 20s, but I will tell you that, when you someday wake up and find yourself 40 or 50 and you have, $500,000 or something, or even $1 million in your 401k that you started, when you were 22, you're going to be very happy about that because life is messy and you're not always able to focus on investing in retirement the way that you want to when other things in your life happen. Investing is a very, it's something that you should get comfortable with and you should definitely try, but you should also be careful. So I'll start with one of the last points first. Robinhood, for example, is a very popular app that a lot of people have been using to sort of dip their toe in the investing world. And while it's a great app and it's easy to use, it's really easy to get yourself into hot water in those types of applications. So, make sure that you have an idea of what you're doing before you do that. One of the best ways to try investing is to use fake money and then, try it. Some of the safer ways to invest are like an indexed mutual fund or ETFs, or maybe not an indexed fund, but a fund that's, built for your age, like, Fidelity or a Vanguard. If you were to go open an IRA with them or invest in a mutual fund, they have different funds where you can pick your level of risk based on how old you are and sort of your tolerance to risk. So those are good low risk ways to invest money. They're not going to give you a lot of return, but they're a good way to start feeling confident about managing your money. As a young adult, I would say one of the best ways that you can invest is a Roth IRA. It's an investment vehicle that you invest in after taxes, which means that because it's an after-tax contribution, when you withdraw money from it, you're not paying a penalty or a tax. They're great because when you do invest in them, the money's there. And let's say you've invested a lot of money in your early 20s and you find yourself in your late 20s or early 30s wanting to buy a house. It's a great way to pull money, to sort of have a pool of money to pull from when you need things like a down payment, or, maybe you have, some sort of life issue that you need to pay for. Roth IRAs are available only to people within certain income brackets. So as you make more and more money, they're not available. So one good source of investment information I have here is NerdWallet. It's a great website. I think a lot of the articles on there are pretty well researched. So I would encourage any of you to go out and look at that website. Right, financial goal setting. Even if you are 21, leaving college, and you have no idea what you want to do with your life, it's always good to have some goals. It could be something as, big as buying a condo, and it could be something as small as saving for a vacation. Like maybe you want to go on a cruise or something like that. Having financial goals is a way to keep yourself disciplined so that you are always moving towards, an end goal, and you're not just saving money for no reason. It sort of gives you a purpose, and it gives you a way to sort of structure your budget so that you feel as though your money is doing something, right? It's not just sitting there. When you do set financial goals, you should always make sure that your plan allows you to live your life. One of the most dangerous things that I think a person can do is to be too ambitious in their goals and really think, okay, I'm going to save, 80% of my paycheck and really try to live off of only this 20% or be super cheap or something like that. And, if you want to live that way, great. But you're only 20 once. You're only in your 20s, your 30s once. So, don't let life pass you by. So that's all I have for money. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone want to discuss this at all?
This is Tina from Sigma chapter. I know that one of the things that I have found is interested in talking about finances with you, and it doesn't need to be the details. Like, you don't have to share your exact savings numbers or income numbers or anything like that, but having somebody else who's kind of in the same general area to brainstorm with or talk about or ask the silly questions has been something that I've found really helpful. I know that I have 3 sorority sisters that I reach out to if I have questions or want to check my plan against. Be like, does this make sense? Do you think this is reasonable, or should I reconsider something? Something that I found really helpful.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Sometimes it's nice to sort of level set with other people. This may sound ridiculous, but I talk to my mom all the time about this stuff. My mom's just really good at finances. So, your parents are good for something. Any other questions? So, when you graduate college, it's easy. Some people are really great about setting up their own routines and some people are not. It's I will tell you, for me, it was a little bit of a shock to my system, because all of a sudden I wasn't walking a couple miles a day around campus, and all of a sudden I was sitting a lot at a desk, and you really have to sort of create these healthy habits for yourself. And I would say it's all about moderation. You can have fun, just make sure you do it a little bit at a time. Healthy eating is always going to not only make you feel good, but it's going to really impact your positive thinking, and sort of just your mind as well as your body. And the other thing that I would say that as I'm entering my 40s is to proactively take care of your body. You only have one set of teeth, and dental work is expensive. So go to the dentist, brush your teeth, floss. It sounds ridiculous to say that, but really, when you get to be an older age and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm looking at having to get a root canal and a crown, it's not fun. Same thing with your skin. Your skin's with you for life. Take care of it. Choices that you make now about what you put in your body and how you treat your body are going to impact your future health. So, make sure that you're really thinking about what you're doing, and not just sort of partaking in everything. And a good way to sort of, keep yourself balanced is to actively look for ways to manage stress. Stress and anxiety do a lot of damage on the human body, some of which can last a lifetime. So it's really good to try to, develop healthy habits about, either exercising or meditating or yoga, or whatever it is that you use to manage your stress and anxiety. So health and dental insurance, and I put this in here, I don't know what you guys know, but I know that if you're getting out of college and you have your first job, and the HR people sign you up for some HMO plan or whatever, and you all of a sudden get this health card, in health insurance ID card in the mail, and you're like, well, what do I do now? One of the first things that you probably should consider doing is finding a primary care physician. Daily or yearly checkups are important. If you're in a different state or a city and you don't know how to find a doctor, a good place to look is going to the website for your health insurance. A lot of them will have a list of in-network doctors, and you can sort of find a bunch of doctors that are either near your work or near where you live. Picking a doctor is not kind of just choosing the person that sounds the nicest. Things that you should always think about is, are they affiliated with a hospital you like? If they're affiliated with the hospital that's down in the middle of the city and impossible to go to, maybe don't pick that doctor if you're, in the suburbs. Can you get basic blood work, labs, prescriptions, whatever there? Or are you going to have to be running to, 3 different offices for that? Is the doctor affiliated with a larger network of specialists? There are there are sort of healthcare groups that will have a network of specialists within their healthcare group. So, maybe you go to their building and they have the general practice on floor 3 and they have gynecology on floor 2. I think, for a 20-year-old, that's a nice, easy place to start, because, everything's kind of right there for you, and you're not, taking off every other day at work to go to a different doctor's office. You can kind of all get it in one place. Other things, there are people who will get jobs that don't offer health insurance, or maybe the health insurance isn't as great. And, you should be aware that with the, Affordable Care Act, you have public options. And in most instances, you can stay on your parents' insurance until you're 25. So, I would check everything, check the public option, check your parents' insurance, see what really the best option is. If you're going right into grad school, or you are, a lot of grad schools will offer health insurance. So you should, make sure you look into that as well. Don't just assume that you're going to have to go on a public option because you're going to get your PhD or master's or whatever. Another thing is, if, and you're at an employer that offers a dental plan, definitely look into it, because dental work is very expensive. And as I said earlier, you only have one set of teeth. So foregoing dental care is not a great decision usually. So. Before I move forward, is there any questions about health and dental and sort of being healthy? So the next thing that I want to talk about is sort of your home and apartments and roommates, because, one of the things that is sort of daunting is if you're moving to a new city and you need to find an apartment or a roommate. Always read your lease agreement, and always make sure that you're comfortable with your relationship with your landlord. In most cities and states, they will, it's a landlord friendly area. Actually, I'm going to stop right here because there's two questions. So Tina made a great point. Vision is another benefit that a lot of companies offer. And if you have glasses or contacts, you should definitely take advantage of it, because most employee offered vision plans are great. When is a good time to become independent from your parents for health or dental? Well, I think it depends on your option, right? So you might have a great insurance plan with the new job that you take. If that's the case, then by all means do that. You should be aware that if you do stay on your parents' insurance, there can be tax issues. They may claim you in some way, shape, or form as a dependent on their taxes. So you want to be conscious of that. And that's really a discussion you should have with your parents. Does that answer your question? Caitlin, did that answer your question? I don't know if anyone else had any input on when to switch. Nope. Okay, so another thing is, what is an average copay for health insurance? So yeah, and Stephanie brought up that you have multiple options for health insurance. So that is true. The average copay really depends on your policy, and policies run the gamut. You can have policies that are very inclusive and have a lot of benefits included, and you can see copays that are, $20, $30. Sometimes wellness visits will be free. You can also see other healthcare plans which are sort of cropping up more regularly now, where there are deductible amounts. So you will pay sort of for health services up to a certain amount of money. So for example, $3,000 might be the deductible amount. So you're paying out of pocket up to $3,000. And then after that point, the healthcare plan will cover everything else. In a lot of those plans, what employers will typically match them with are healthcare savings plans. So it's pre-tax contribution to a savings plan that you can then pay those health costs from. The benefit of that is that it's pre-tax, so you're sort of, you're not making money, but you're not paying taxes on a portion of funds. There are usually limits on those, though. The limits on how much you can contribute really vary greatly from company to company. Usually anywhere from, I would say, $2,000 to $5,000. And in some companies, the companies will match a portion of what you donate into the healthcare savings plan. So did that kind of answer your question about copays? Sarah? Yes, okay. Sorry, I didn't really, this is kind of getting a little more HR than I would have wanted. But anyway, so I hope that's helpful. I mean, it's employer specific. So I think that, you know, a good thing to do is to look at the benefits information when you get a job, and sort of become aware of all of this. And you're presumably all healthy 20-year-olds. So, you know, there's not a whole lot of concern here that, you know, you're all of a sudden going to be, you know, paying for cancer treatment or something like that. But it's good to know what you're being covered for. Yeah. Yeah, and Gabby and Claire also posted some stuff in the chat as well that you guys can check out. So I'm going to move forward really quick because we're sort of running out of time. So apartments and roommates, definitely check your roommates carefully. Check them out on social media. A good thing to do is to have an honest conversation before you decide anything and make sure you feel comfortable with not only them, but that your lifestyles mesh. Because the last thing you want to do is find yourself in a situation where you're living with someone and you're just not getting along. The classic guidance on rent and mortgages is you should never spend more than 30% of your gross monthly income on housing. So when you're trying to decide how much to pay for your rent, you know, take a look at what you're going to be bringing home from your first job monthly. I would look at it, you know, after taxes, and, you know, do 30% of that number, and that should give you a good, you know, metric on what you should not exceed. The other thing is, you know, you should create a comfortable living space for yourself. You know, you spend a lot of time where you live, and it's important for your mental health to feel comfortable and like, you know, it's your home. So I have just a few more things. So the next thing is, you know, healthy relationships. And I think I have friends who are in their 30s that are still, you know, trying to figure this out. So there's no right time to figure out how to have a healthy relationship with other people. Life does not follow a straight path, and that's so true in so many ways. Nothing that you do in life is ever going to follow a straight path. You know, the best laid plans. The only thing you can do, and what I like to tell people, is make good decisions. You know, just, I think it was, you're probably not all familiar with Frozen 2, but I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I think Anna says, do the next right thing. So do the next right thing. That's all you can really ever do. You know, so if you're, for example, trying to go find a significant other, you know, you can't say, okay, I'm going to join, you know, Match.com, and within 3 months, I'm going to find someone serious to date and give them 2 months. And then if they don't work out, you're going to pan them and go to the next person. That's just, you know, as engineers, it would be great if there was a formula, but there's really not. The only thing you can do is put yourself in situations where you can make stuff happen. And maybe that thing that happens is not finding your future life partner. Maybe it's finding a good job lead or someone cool to hang out with. But putting yourself in those situations where you're going to meet people is the best way to move your life forward. And thinking about it as moving your life forward is a lot healthier way than, you know, trying to sort of plan this path. The other thing I think that, you know, a lot of people do at your age is say, oh, well, you should just live life. And that is very true, you should. But, you know, also be conscious that you're only in your 20s once. So, you know, make good decisions. Maybe don't sink so much time and energy into a relationship with someone who doesn't really honor you as a person or respect you. You know, maybe take that time and energy and put it into something else. It doesn't have to be finding another person, but, you know, something that moves you forward in your life path. And I think, you know, the other thing is you should always respect yourself. If you have respect for yourself, you're going to necessarily put yourself in situations where you have healthy relationships, and you're not with people who are not respecting you for who you are, or not valuing your worth. And the other thing I think for people who sort of find themselves in their late 20s, early 30s, maybe not having gone down the path that they wish they had gone, is don't put your life on hold until the perfect scenario presents itself. One thing that I'll see a lot of, as someone, I'm turning 39 in November, and I have a lot of friends who have put off having children, for example, until they have the perfect job and they have a house and they're married and everything's wonderful. And, they find themselves 36 or whatever, and they're trying to have those kids, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. And, maybe that was the right decision, maybe it wasn't. But I think the one thing you should always keep in the back of your mind is that there is no perfect time to do anything. You really, if, make a good decision, but if you think you can handle it and it's something you want to do, you should always consider what the repercussions are of waiting to do certain things, like, have kids, or make that career change, or, move to that new city. You only get one life. So are there any questions? Did anyone want to weigh in on this at all? Anyone? Any older people want to weigh in on this? No?
I will. This is Mary. I agree with what you said about taking advantage of the opportunities, because you're young one time. And I want to speak to specifically having children at a younger age, at an older age. I was actually 35 and turned 36 when I delivered Ashton. And yeah, being an older parent, it's different. But for me, I wanted to make sure I had my career intact, and make sure, I had my MBA, I had traveled and everything before I got married and started a family. However, that might not be everybody's path, but I can tell you, being older and becoming a high risk pregnancy, yeah, those are things that I had to take in consideration. And then thinking about being close to, looking at retirement age as my son is going into college. These are all the things you have to weigh the pros and cons. So when he was in kindergarten, he went to kindergarten, came home one day, and said, "Mom?" And I said, "Yes, Ashton." He said, "You know what?" And I was like, "Yes, Ashton, what?" "I have an old mama and an old daddy." Yeah, that's what you get when you have when you start that track out later in life. But in the end, it is what it is. But it's just something to take in consideration. Yeah, I carry him on my insurance, but he understands if I carry him on my insurance till he's 26, then there is, just like you said, the tax implications, right? Because it comes up a question: can anybody claim you on your taxes? I claim him because I'm still although he's a college student and everything, I'm claiming him on my taxes, and I know that I'll be paying for his health insurance for at least 26, because it's just so expensive. But those are balance and counterbalances. But I just wanted to bring that out and help the dialogue along.
Yeah, that's all really, that's good feedback. And I think that when to have kids, whether to have kids thing is a difficult thing to sort of think about and rationalize in your head. I went through 6 years of infertility, and I'm going to be 39, and we are having a baby via surrogate in a month and a half. And that was really because, you know, we waited 4 years after we had my daughter, and I realized I couldn't have children anymore. And that's, you know, that's sort of what I went through. And I think other people are lucky enough to get pregnant naturally when they're older. And there are pros and cons to waiting till you're older. And there's great parts about having children when you're younger. I think it's really, you know, it's just stuff that you should think about. You know, being very focused on your career, it's great. And maybe that's what you want to do, but you know, you have, you know, your life is more than that. So think about all aspects. Do what's best for you. And the other thing is we have a pregnancy and fertility group within the sorority that we're sort of trying to start up. And I think that if there's anyone on this call that has more questions about that, or even wants to just sort of think about it and what's involved in that sort of stuff, you know, I think even, you know, if you're in your 20s and you're sort of questioning what I'm going to do in the future about this, it's not necessarily a bad thing to listen to other people's stories. You know, hearing a story like Mary's and, you know, appreciating what Mary chose to do might help you make a decision on what it is that you want to do. So definitely reach out or make yourself available for these different events, you know, and join them, even if you're not thinking about getting pregnant. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I think all of you asked about this, was meeting new people. And actually, Carolyn just asked, when it comes to getting your first job, how selective should you be on the location? For example, I want to live in Seattle, but I'm not getting any job offers from that area. Would it be worth it to hold off and wait to see if I can get a job, or take it in a different location and wait before trying to move again?
Well, Kellen, can I take that one?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you like my mom and my daddy told me, because really I wanted to be in the Southern Belt. My mom had relocated to Savannah, Georgia, which is absolutely beautiful, and I could not get a job there. And she told me, and she and my dad told me, you got to take the job. You go where the job is. And that was a tough answer, but it was the realistic answer. Because one thing about it, if you're working, you can always go to the places that you like to visit. And who's to say down the road you can't get back to, you know, your ideal place? But it's easier to look for a job when you have a job and you need the experience. So I took that. It was, you know, it didn't come out the way I wanted to hear it, but that was the answer. I would tell you, go for the opportunity and then look for the desired locations. I have worked in some locations early on in my career. They weren't optimal, but as I got more senior in my career, I was able to make those decisions about where I would not and would work. But you got to start somewhere. So I wouldn't turn down any opportunities. I'm telling my son the same thing. He's going to be a senior in college this year. Yeah, okay, I can't believe it either. But these are the things I'm telling him too, right? I'm telling him, you go where the opportunity is. Because the bottom line is, he's not going to be living in my basement, right? But I'm joking, but I'm for real. So you take advantage of every opportunity. It might not be your ideal first choice, but the opportunity, you never know where the opportunity is going to land and what connections you're going to make to get you where you ultimately want to go. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, no, and that's great. I totally agree with Mary. You know, your first job is kind of your first job. You might stay at it for 20 years, but don't throw away an opportunity just because you want to be in a certain city. It's easier to move when you have experience. So Claire, you are asking how long to stay at your first job. I think it depends on the industry you're in and what your sort of long-term goals are. I can take it from the point of view of someone who moved quickly. I only stayed at my first job for, I think, 2 years, and then I went to law school. And I've moved jobs quite a bit in my career. And I would say that I'm an advocate for moving jobs because it helps you get a lot of different experience. That said, I know a lot of people in the sorority who are still at their first job, 15, 20 years later. And I think it really depends on the industry. I happen to be in power generation and power grid work when I got out of college, and I knew I wanted to go to law school. However, if you want to go work at GM or IBM, for example, I mean, then that's kind of, you're looking at a long-term career there. So you might want to stay longer. I don't know if any other alums had any input on that.
I can jump in on it. I know that the feedback or the advice I received for my first job was to try and stay at it for at least 2 years. Obviously, if you're in a scenario that is dangerous or is unhealthy for every reason, that's different. But employers who will hire you after that first job like to see that you're somebody that's not going to up and leave as soon as you're trained, right? 2 years is enough time to be trained in your position and have experience in your position and really pay it back to the company the time and the effort that they've put into getting you ramped up for your role. And it encourages future employers to feel like it'll be worth their time to hire you if you've stayed there at least 2 years in the first one. Cal, I also agree with it. The ability to change is really the biggest opportunity to get your pay increases and your benefits improved. That ability to jump around a little for that second, third, maybe fourth role. And it doesn't have to be another company. It just provides a set opportunity for you to negotiate with your employer. So whether that's whether you're at a large company and can therefore just take another role internally, or whether you want to move and therefore you're going to take a role with the same company at a different location. That's another opportunity to move. That, if for example you're I know, Carolyn, you asked about location. If you were to take a job opportunity with a large company that has a national footprint, you could start that job at a different location and then transfer internally to get back where you wanted over time. So that's kind of an in-between step. But yeah, that's the recommendation I had received, and it worked out well for me to do that.
So were there any other questions about sort of your first job and where to take it, how long to stay, that sort of stuff? And you guys can feel free to talk. All right, so I'm going to move on to
Oh, Helen, I'm having problems. I had a question. I wanted to really, you said something that was very, very important, and it's about, the retirement and the financial acumen, right? That is so important to understand budgets and managing your money, and it's, early on. And you know what? It might just be good for us to consider having a group that just just to bring in a financial person to talk to the sorority, to the actives and to the alums on saving strategies. Because as my mama said, she said, ain't nothing cute about being old and no money. And, as I'm looking towards the retirement phase of my life, I'm very conscious about making sure that I have saved, and I'm, putting more into my my employer savings. We don't have 401ks. We have something else like a TSP because I work for the federal government. So I'm making sure that I'm contributing and getting those matched dollars. A lot of times as young professionals, we don't understand how important it is, because but you have to look at it as free money. right? And it's set aside for you. So if we get into the habit of saving like that, it really does help in the long run, because you never know what curves your life is going to take. So I want to tell you, thank you for bringing that up as a point of consideration um, for purposes of this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, yeah, we have talked about potentially bringing someone in again. Actually, Christine McLaren held a session a couple years ago on this sort of topic, which she's great because she's HR, so she's used to doing this sort of stuff. And we can certainly do that again for convention. We can look at doing that. But yeah, you never know what roads your life are going to take. So, I mean, start saving now, because trust me, the decisions become a lot harder once you get older and you have more places that your money can possibly go. Like, do you pay down your student loans, or do you buy the new house, or do you remodel your bathroom, or put more money in your IRA? The decisions become a lot more complicated as you get older. It's easier to start younger when you only have, do I go out tonight or do I not go out tonight? So I guess the last thing that everyone sort of asked was how to meet new people when you go to new cities. And I would say use your FIRO network. That's a really good way to start. And I know a lot of people who have done that. And, other ways is to let your existing network know you're moving to a new city and ask for friend hookups, or ask your FIRO network for a friend hookup. That's a great way to meet people. Use your employee resource groups. If you're at a big company, a lot of the big companies will have, employee social hours or different events for employees. Definitely take advantage of those. And meetups is a great way. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but they have those for everyone, for people in their 20s, people with kids. There are meetups for everything. And the other thing is, making a new friend is like dating. There needs to be chemistry. So, don't be afraid to friend date. It's hard. I will say that once you get out of college and you're not in school and you don't sort of have that established system where you can meet people and foster friendships, and you have like a common struggle of classwork to sort of bond over, it does become a lot harder to meet people and develop sort of meaningful relationships. So, it takes a lot of effort. It is like dating, but it's definitely possible, and you just have to be willing to stick with it. So that's my last slide. Is there anything anyone else wanted to ask or bring up? And I kind of gave a sort of a broad overview. So if there's anything that I didn't talk about that you want some advice on, or you want to talk about, please bring it up.
No, this was excellent information. It's good that we're talking about it now just for awareness purposes, because we won't always, as we understand now, we won't always be in college, right? And so there's other things that other adjustments we have to make as we transition from one phase of our lives to another. So thank you so much, Kellen.
Oh, you're welcome, Mary. Great. Well, I'll give you guys just another minute or two, and if there's no more questions, then we can go ahead and end. And please feel free to give feedback. This conference was sort of, a last minute thing to try to do in light of COVID. So we're always open to changing things or doing more work. So please feel free to give honest feedback. All right, well, thank you all. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.